S nama je profesor Ivica Raguž. Evo, profesor je završio simpozij povodom 500 godina reformacije, Lectio Strossmayer. Možete nam nešto više reći o samom simpoziju, koji je razlog bio njegovog osnivanja i vaša refleksija na sve ovo što je se dogodilo danas?
Evo je Katolički bogoslovni fakultet u Đakovu pridružio se mnogim učilištima diljem Europe, ali i svijeta, bilo u Katoličkoj crkvi, bilo u drugim crkvama, obilježavanju 500. godišnjice reformacije. Stoga smo pokušali u današnji dan promišljati baštinu reformacije. Za nas je to važno jer je to i veliki ekumenski događaj, budući da reformaciju treba shvatiti kao jedan poticaj, kritički poticaj za promišljanje mnogih sadržaja kršćanske vjere i dan danas. Posebno to vrijedi, kako ja uvijek volim istaknuti danas, kada je Martin Luther i njegova teološka i duhovna baština koji put danas strana, bilo crkvama reformacije, ali i katoličkoj crkvi. Uzmimo primjer sola gracia, ko danas govori o milosti, ko danas traži milosnoga Boga kako ga je tražio Martin Luther, svijest o grešnosti, svijest o velikom i snažnom đavolskom utjecaju, gotovo da uopće ne igraju te teme nikakvu ulogu u katoličkoj pa i u protestantskoj teologiji. Ili pitanje sola scriptura, u smislu da je Božja riječ u središtu ne samo kršćanskog života, nego teologije. Koji put se dobiva dojam da se zahvaljujući historijsko-kritičkoj metodi zapravo Biblija još više otuđila od teologa i od konkretnih vjernika, konkretnog života, da se zapravo i biblijska teologija pretvorila ono što bi Luther rekao u filologiju. Kao da smo se udaljili u žive riječi. Mislim da nam tu Luther itekako može pripomoći da, kako on veli, da visimo o Božoj riječi, da Božju riječ shvatimo kao onu koji nas vodi, kao stranu riječ, das fremde Wort, koji nas vodi u svakodnevnom životu. Ili tema, naravno, vjere u vremenu racionalizacije, vjere koja proizlazi iz događaja raspetoga Boga, Boga koji nas je iznenadio, Boga koji se je sebe poništio, od nas očekuje promjenu koja se ne može temeljiti na pukom razumu. Evo, to su mnoge teme koje smo mogli čuti i na ovome simpoziju, u mnogim predavanjima, i vjerujem da one mogu, kao što rekao, biti poticajne ne samo za crkve i koje su proizašle iz baštine reformacije, nego, kao što rekoh, i za katoličku crkvu, odnosno katoličku teologiju.
Današnji gost je bio John Milbank. Možete nam nešto više reći o njemu kao osobi i pa možemo reći da je on u stvari bio jedan od glavnih predavača danas i u stvari jedan od razloga zašto smo se danas ovdje sastali. Pa evo nešto o njemu kao osobi i kao teologu.
Samo kratko, evo, ovo je treći Lectio Strossmayer. Prvi je bio profesor Jan Heiner Tück, drugi Lectio Strossmayer je bio profesor Thomas Oeding i evo u ovoj godini reformacije profesor John Milbank sa sveučilišta u Nottinghamu. Na neki način bilo je prirodno da ove godine kao predavača pozovemo jednog protestantskog teologa, to jest anglikanskog teologa. Posebno ako imamo na umu da je ovaj lekcija posvećen biskupu Strossmayeru. Usudio bih se reći, kako sam to istaknuo u uvodu ovoga simpozija, da je zapravo na službenoj razini katoličke crkve ekumensko otvaranje katoličke crkve prema protestantizmu ili baštini reformacije došlo iz ovog maloga mjesta, a to je Đakovo. S ovoga učilišta, ako tako smijemo reći. Ako imamo na umu da je biskup Strossmayer održao onaj poznati govor na Prvom Vatikanskom saboru gdje pozitivno govori o protestantizmu i baštini reformacije. U tom smislu nam je bilo velika čast i veliko zadovoljstvo da smo mogli ugostiti velikoga zaista teologa anglikanskog Johna Milbanka, koji nam je progovorio upravo o tim, a to ćemo moći i čuti u intervju koji će evo uslijediti, a onda i u predavanju koje ćemo moći čuti. Progovorio nam je upravo o slojevitom teološkom i duhovnom značenju cjelokupne baštine, gdje je on i kao anglikanski protestantski teolog također upozorio na ono što je i problematično i dan danas u reformaciji, ali i ono što možemo itekako naučiti od baštine reformacije, bilo da su to djela koja se čine zbog samoga dobra, bilo da su to neke druge teme. Evo zaista ovo je bio jednom riječju veliki teološki, a onda i ekumenski događaj za naše učilište.
Good afternoon, Professor Milbank. I'm greeting you in front of our faculty television, and I'm very glad to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Lovely to be in Đakovu.
Yeah. I'm very thankful on your today's lecture here in our faculty. First of all, how would you evaluate ecumenical efforts in the last century, especially after the Second Vatican Council, and maybe ecumenical situation in the 21st century?
Well, in some ways, I don't think it's looking very good, because I think we're seeing confessional lines hardened and become associated with national and cultural differences. I think so far the approach to ecumenism has often been official and to do with, high-level talks about doctrine and so on. And the trouble with this is that, intellectual people or officials agree with each other, and it doesn't have any impact. Nothing ever gets done, and I think it's the wrong approach. I think what matters is practical attempts at cooperation over practical projects, and also the extension of intercommunion. In reality, Catholics do allow Orthodox and Anglicans to receive where there's the Eucharist, where there's no other recourse. So we need to recognize that there is already intercommunion. I mean, we need to start from the idea that there already is one Christian church. It's not something we have to achieve. It's something achieved by God through the Eucharist. And what the bounds of this are, who can say? But we need to try. The approach should be more anarchic, to be frank. That we should try to extend intercommunion. We should try to extend liturgical and practical cooperation, so that eventually our different Christian traditions become simply different traditions with one ecclesial community. Nothing in history happens formally. Formality is just a post facto recognition of what has already become true. Yeah.
You're generally known as the founder of the movement in theology and philosophy called Radical Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
So what is actually considered under the term Radical Orthodoxy?
Well, I think it deliberately tries to denote many different things. I mean, I think quite simply the implication is that people who are liberal assume that they are the radical transgressive people. What we're trying to say is that original Christian gospel and patristic orthodoxy was the most radical imaginable transformation of the world. And I think we're trying to say that orthodoxy is also not necessarily conservative. It's transformative, and it has a radical social and political vision, which doesn't always coincide with a secular one, but is in some ways more thoroughgoing. I think it denotes radicality in the sense of going back to the roots, but also in the sense of being prepared to think of orthodoxy as a developing organic reality in the line of John Henry Newman, capable of new insights, if you like. And I think for my mind also there is something about sort of reconsidering the fact that a lot of orthodoxy, so the way we read the scriptures typologically, the tradition of the spiritual senses goes back to Origen, and yet Origen's metaphysics are in some ways different. They're more compatible in some ways with the Oriental metaphysics. He has a vision of apocostasis, the transformation of all things. And I'm very sympathetic to that kind of universalism that we find also in Erigena. So in some ways there's a slight sense of challenging what orthodoxy is, that I'm creedally totally orthodox, but I wonder if some elements of what we take to be orthodoxy, like the idea of the eternity of hell, are questionably orthodox. In that sense, I want a much more radical orthodoxy, as opposed to either a kind of stiff tradition on the one hand or liberalism on the other.
Now I would like to ask you, how would you define theology? What is the task of theology today?
I think the task of theology today is to recover its status as queen of the sciences. I think we need to stop being falsely apologetic or falsely modest. I think this is a betrayal of God, rather than what we take it to be, a recognition of our own humility. It isn't. And that we have to try to recover a reading of God, of the world from the divine, our participation in the divine perspective. We have to realize that theology is not a kind of local discipline. It's not located within a general metaphysics. It is philosophy, it is metaphysics. There is no boundary between theology and philosophy. We have to go back to the perspectives of somebody like Augustine and talk about theology as Christian philosophy, that it's an entire reading of being and the world and everything. But of course that means that this doesn't imply in any sense whatsoever some kind of deduction from one imperial discourse. On the contrary, it implies that theology is really only present insofar as it makes a difference to lots of different discourses that are, whose particularity and empiricism we utterly respect. But there's a certain sense that theology is there where it's always refracting things, where always seeing things from an eternal perspective, and this makes a difference. It makes a difference to everything. It may even make a difference to natural science.
You have just mentioned philosophy. In what measure are theology and philosophy dependent of each other?
I think we need to approach that genealogically. We need to realize that originally for the Greeks, philosophy was also a spiritual discipline that often had its own sacred texts, and that equivalently Christians sort of inherited the task of philosophy with a different set of sacred texts, and that in many, the word theology in our usage comes in only very, very late on, and we therefore need to recover some sense of a more integral discourse. Obviously, there are ways in which our rational reflections can coincide with those of people other faith than none. In that sense, there can be a certain philosophical a difference between philosophy and theology, but I don't think the boundary is clear. I think the boundary is incredibly fluid, and that as Christians, our philosophical vision will be informed by our Christianity, and that theology can't be articulated without certain metaphysical commitments. So there's no sharp boundary, I think, at all between faith and reason. And in this sense, I'm very more sympathetic to the Russian tradition of not making any sharp separation between the two at all. And I think one of the profound problems of theology is that it assumes too distinct a boundary between these discourses, and this means that philosophy tends to set the scene, and then theology is trying to operate within these what is considered acceptable by philosophy, and that we have to sort of break through that barrier if we're to get anywhere in the future.
Do you think that theology today is in crisis?
I think theology today is in an absolutely astonishing position because I think the levels of commitment, talent and vision are extraordinary, so that I can only speak for Britain and to a degree for America, maybe France and Italy. I think that there are young people who are tremendous. Up and down England, there are theology societies that are full all the time, and yet theology is in the most incredible institutional crisis. It's the support of universities is being removed. The support of the churches is often being removed. They're not interested. So the question for the future is what new institutional forms can carry forward the interest in theology. And I think already people are trying to craft new kinds of institution that will almost go back to the cathedral schools, sort of before the founding of the university, that these will be institutions of spiritual formation, liturgical practice, and theological link to general education, but in a very new sort of way, a new way that is as much less clerical and is suited to our conditions in the 21st century. But I think the crisis of theology is related to a general crisis of the university, where increasingly universities like my own at Nottingham, which I've recently retired from, are just completely given over to capitalism and managerialism. They've utterly lost sight of any serious academic purpose or overall intellectual vision, and therefore there's a tremendous attack on Nottingham, for example, is dominated by engineers, so the pure sciences there are in crisis, never mind the humanities, never mind theology. And in some ways, the future of theology, which aims at an overall metaphysical vision, is bound up with the fate of the humanities, and even with the fate of objective scientific, genuinely open rather than technocratic inquiry. So that I think the future will be very much about religious people, maybe predominantly Christians, saving the university, saving the academic enterprise in the course of saving theology. And we have to be as bold as that.
And from the end of our conversation, could you describe the status of theology among the students in England, the interests for theology and so on?
Yes, I could try to do so. Of course, they're very varied. But I think in general what you see is, first of all, the end of liberalism, that most people who are still bothered with theology at all are probably going to be Orthodox Christians. But at the same time, their approach tends to be very interdisciplinary. They're not really concerned with systematic theology any longer in any narrow sense. It's always a matter of theology and, if you like, so that the interest in the relationship of theology and philosophy, but also theology and literature, theology and nature, the new nature writing and so on. All this kind of thing is very much burgeoning. It's not that people have lost interest in the Trinity and in the Incarnation, but they're trying to relate it to broader concerns, to produce, something like an overarching vision without seeing that as, necessarily a great big system.